listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord!
Praise God! Give away!
Welcome to the House by the Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello.
And on this episode, we're discussing The Changeling, which is not to be confused with the Angelina Jolie, Clint Eastwood directed Changeling film. This is The Changeling from 1980, which was directed by Peter Medak, and is a movie that I'd heard about before. And it's kind of one of those horror movies. It's on a lot of lists of like things to watch at some point, and it's not one of the forefront movies like The Exorcist or Halloween or something. It's kind of like I would say, like, you know, similar tier to like The Sentinel that we discussed before.
Yeah, I would put it right around that.
And not saying quality wise, just saying awareness wise, like Don't Look Now and different things where you know.
I think if you watch, like, I could feel like this movie by any like essential 100 horror movies list, like it'd be somewhere around The Sentinel and what you just said. Don't Look Now.
Scorsese has it on his top 11 scariest movies of all time. You know.
Yeah, so it's just a lot of these horror movies that aren't your big franchises, aren't your huge, widely known box office success stories.
But they're definitely worth checking out.
They're the ones that were successful and, you know, to some extent, and
influence.
This was a Canadian production.
And don't get talked about as much maybe in recent years, even though it may have had an influence on a lot of things. Because that's another thing, too. With a lot of movies, it's hard to go back if you've never watched a classic or like a older film that had elements from it reused in a lot of other things.
Yeah,
because
like this one does.
Because you go back, and not saying my experience watching this, but just in general, you go back and watch something, and somebody, trying to think of an example of something, because there's been movies and music and all kinds of stuff where someone originated or, you know, did something innovative to kind of create an experience, and then someone who watched that and loved it then tried to recreate that in their movie just because they loved it, and, you know, as an homage and all that stuff. So people only see the modern reimagining that has modern technology and modern acting and modern, you know, like it looks crisp and
modern
clean
sensibilities,
and then they go back and watch the original. It does nothing for them because they've already seen this more modern thing that did the same thing. And that's why I think a lot of times a lot of movies, it's good to go back and try to just watch them on their own accord and enjoy them, but it helps if you saw it before you saw other things. Because I'm trying to think, there's like other, so like Halloween, if somebody had only ever seen the remake from 2007, they go back and watch the original, they probably think it's boring. Mm-hmm. Because the original is an hour and a half, and the remake covers the entire story of the original in half the runtime, because it crams it into the back half of the movie after kind of the origin story. So if somebody goes back and watch the original, they're just like, man, we only see him as a kid.
Yeah.
A little stringy-haired kid. How's he? And then he turns into a pro wrestler. But yeah, so like The Changeling is something that's on those, like, a lot of lists, and something that I hadn't seen until we watched it for this.
I think when we get to the review portion, I think we do like a brief non-spoilery.
Yeah.
Because it just came out on Blu-ray here recently. But before that, like, it's not on Netflix, anything like that. I don't think you can even rent it. You might be able to, but you did notice it was on YouTube, Derek.
Yeah, I found it on YouTube.
But a sped up version, you know?
The sped up version. Well, I think the runtime was like, what is it, an hour and 47? The one I watched was like, it wasn't like that much sped up, but it was like an hour and like 40 or something.
Yeah,
so
which is why
like
if you really want to help, you know, like all these movies, go out and buy a copy.
Which, yeah, I always heard about this film. So like earlier in the summer or earlier in the year, I think I bought a copy from Best Buy for like $6 a DVD.
Yeah.
But then right after that, they announced the Blu-ray that was coming out. But the DVD is fine. You know, it's not a great transfer, but it's something.
Yeah, well, it's good enough.
Yeah, but I'm interested in seeing that Blu-ray version for sure. But yeah, I think just because it's not so widely available, and this isn't one that, you know, is talked about a whole lot, I think we just keep a brief spoiler-free section.
Yeah.
You know, and then go into full spoilers.
Yeah, because it's, you know, it could be more of a recommendation of if this sounds up your alley, then check it out.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, we'll briefly discuss some things we've been watching. So, Sean, you only watched like one episode of Castle Rock, right?
I can't remember. I think I watched a couple episodes. but I really want to get back to it. Yeah, our time watching is limited, of course, so we decided to mainline and try to get through Sharp Objects on time before things got spoiled for
Look,
that. So, I'm not
seen-
far into Castle Rock.
Having
at all.
not seen Sharp Objects, based on the fact that it's an 8-episode limited run series with Amy Adams, and it sounds, like it's been a very worthwhile watch, I think you probably made the wise choice.
Yeah.
Because Castle Rock hasn't been bad. So I have watched through. So we're recording these 2 episodes back to back, and I have watched. So this will be like a week delayed. So there's the episode that comes out on September 5th. I will not have seen when you listen to this, but I watched everything prior to that, and I'm trying to remember how many episodes there have been so far. Let's see, because the Hulu app is terrible. But Castle Rock, like I've watched that through the most recent episode, and for a while it just felt to me like it was moving really slowly, and they weren't really doling out any of the information, and they were just kind of making you wait. Because let's see, so I've seen through episode 8. So episode 8, you still haven't gotten much backstory on what's going on. They're giving you little tidbits. But this isn't a Twin Peaks: The Return type series that's kind of a mysterious.
Yeah.
The mystery isn't the point, and this one, a lot of the mystery is the point, and you have a lot of these plot threads where you don't really get much information. You get little snippets. Characters do really stupid things, and then you get like a really touching episode where like it deals with characters and it leaves you like leaving with an emotion, and then the next episode feels almost kind of like an American Horror Story type deal, where it's just people get indiscriminately killed in like over the top ways. And to me, the better thing is, granted, then they have little references to Stephen King works and different books and movies and stuff, and all that's cool. But so like Twin Peaks or a lot of things, you have a central mystery the show spirals out from, and then you learn more about the town. But a lot of times it works best when it's the human drama with all of the supernatural elements on the fringe.
Yeah.
And those are just kind of creeping in, so it makes it seem creepier or more supernatural than it really is, because it's on the edge and a lot of it's left to your imagination. And then this one, it just leaves you without a lot. So far, it's left you without a lot of answers. And then recent episodes had just like a string of killings, where characters kind of quickly jumped from one spot to another. And it's one of those other things too, where some of the same characters being involved in multiple situations in a brief amount of time, like Dexter. The problem we had with Dexter is like Dexter and his sister were always at the center of any mass serial killer in Miami, and that didn't really raise enough flags for people. Just like, oh man, you all are so unlucky. But so this show has another thing where there's characters that are just around or involved with multiple murders and things happening, and there's this that is, even though it's voiced, a character voices that, nothing is done about it. So it's one of those things where so far, like, I'm still watching it. We'll watch through the rest of the season.
How many episodes is the season?
I think it's supposed to be 10 or how many?
And they've already greenlit season 2, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure how many episodes of season there's gonna be. It's like 10 or 13, so it's not a ton. It's bad out doing enough research before this. But
Was there some big moment? Was the killing? I saw some people post like, oh, some holy shit moments or something on some recent episodes. Was that basically, you think, just the string of killings and stuff like that?
Yeah. So
Okay.
if the holy shit moment was the recent episode,
I don't remember which one it was, but I heard some people talk about it, and it, made me interested. Like, okay, I need to like jump back into that once we get done with Sharp Objects.
yeah. Is how many episodes it is? It's 10 episodes.
Okay.
So there's 10 episodes, and episode 8 I've watched through. So there's episode 9 and 10. So there's 2 left, and it just feels like those last 2 episodes are going to be revealing a lot.
Especially because this is one contained season, and the next season will be something totally different.
And
right?
it just feels like that's what they have said. It's going to be like an anthology, kind of like American Horror Story, but it's based off of the same location. And the key thing is that when you have characters that aren't a main part of the show, they get involved in stuff, then you don't really have much buildup or reaction to it. So like the WTF moments are a little bit less so than I'm trying to think. So did you watch Fargo season 2? Did anybody watch Fargo season 2?
No.
or like Breaking Bad, there's different, like, well, Fargo season 2, there's a really out of left field moment that people watching it were like, what the hell? Like, but the fact that it was with these characters you're grounded and cared about throughout the course of the series made the moments more impactful.
Oh yeah.
Than if there's characters you see here and there and then something happens, you're like, well, I didn't really care about it. So there's been cool moments, and I'm definitely going to watch it through the end of the season. But if you haven't started watching it, it might be a show that's better to binge watch, because then the lack of answers isn't as annoying when you watch it all back to back and you can just move through. But it does the thing that The Walking Dead and a lot of shows do, where one episode has something happens, the next episode doesn't have anything that progresses what happened at all. So you have something that happens in an episode, and you have to go 2 episodes out to see the resolution of that or what happens. And it feels like a lot of TV shows do that to stall for time. So you have kind of a cliffhangery thing happen. Mm-hmm. The next episode has a lot of flashbacks and flash sideways and things that don't address that plot development. And it takes the next episode to advance that whatsoever. And when it's a more straightforward 10-episode series like this, it feels like it should move a little bit quicker than if it's something that's more, contemplative and ethereal.
It felt like it was like going to be a fun little genre show where, I just want some satisfying episodes followed by some satisfying episodes.
Yeah. So, so far, it's been enjoyable enough. Like I said, we will continue watching it just because we started it. It's just, it has dashes of American Horror Story with how over-the-top things go. And I just don't feel like they've made up enough ground on answering some of the questions or even setting up the interesting elements of the questions. You just get a mystery, and then everybody just keeps dancing around the fringes of the mystery, and you don't really get any insight into it. And I don't feel like it's one of those shows where it's laying out breadcrumbs where you can piece together what's happening on your own so much. Because sometimes that does happen. Like movies or shows leave a lot of clues and foreshadowing. When you sit there and think about it, it all makes sense. So, there's 2 episodes left, so I'll see how it plays out and kind of give a final verdict on the season. As is, to me, it's not must-watch TV. It's just, if you're into streaming, if you watch streaming shows, it's out there and it's, enjoyable. It just moves a little bit slow, and have yet to see how that season pulls together. And since it's, just kind of one-off seasons, it does need to wrap it up for the most part, because it's not like a continuing thing. Like, I think if you left the main plot strands unresolved and then unresolve it as a subplot in an unrelated season, I think that would be a really weird way to go about it.
Yeah.
But yes, I've enjoyed it, but to me, it's not must watch. It's just, fun enough. And it seems like it's doing well for Hulu on viewership, which got the 2nd season already. But the entire show will be done, so you can watch it on Hulu in October if you want something to watch then. It's just, I don't know that I would recommend watching that over just rewatching some of your, watching or rewatching classic movies or whatever.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable enough, but once I get to see how the season ends, maybe I'll have a different opinion, because it's always hard to review a show when it's still going on. But yeah, so that's what I've been watching with Castle Rock. So did anyone else watch anything?
I don't have anything.
I watched The Church, which was, the Demon series, Demons 1, Demon 2, and I guess there's Demon 3. I've not seen Demon 3 or Demons 3. But I like Demons and Demons 2 a whole lot. And this is essentially the, I guess, sort of semi-official 3rd film in the series. But it also is just called The Church. Let me look that up real quick, because it's kind of confusing that I think the other Demons 3 is one they kind of just tacked on to something possibly. As they did a lot for Italian sequels, and of course just kind of jumping off the name brands. But again, I haven't seen that film. But this film is just called The Church, but it also doesn't seem to be connected too much to the demon storyline. It starts off like in the Middle Ages, I guess, or the Crusades, and then it picks up modern day in this church. And of course there's like some conspiracies with what's going on with the church and all this stuff. But the thing about the Demon series that I always loved was that, midway through those films, things got really crazy, and it's essentially just like they're demons, but almost like a zombie film where it's just chaos and people getting killed, and it's just, big things happening with a lot of different demons and just some crazy sequences. This film is much smaller in that regard, where even though it takes place in a church and some people get trapped in a church, you'd almost expect, okay, some demons are going to take over or a bunch of people are going to get turned into demons. It's really not that. Like, there's some small little set pieces that are pretty cool, but also sometimes it feels like they're just these little segments of like, okay, we're just going to show this little cool death sequence and that's it. Doesn't feel very well connected at times. Not a bad film at all, but I don't think it stands next to Demons or Demons 2 in my regard at all. It's fine to watch if you just want to see part of film history and what this film is, and like just kind of complete that out. But otherwise, I don't think it's an essential viewing. Not a bad film at all, but nothing I would say you have to watch. Definitely recommend Demons and Demons 2. But yeah, this film is it's fine. I think it's on Amazon Prime. But yeah, that's pretty much it, I think, aside from just some other rewatches of some stuff. Phantom Thread, been watching that over. Still love that film.
All right, so moving to our discussion of The Changeling, and like Sean said, we'll start out without spoilers and then go into spoilers. Because it's one of those movies where if you haven't heard about it before, you haven't seen it, kind of get an idea of whether or not it sounds like something that's up your alley, and then you can check it out or not. And so the basic synopsis from IMDb is: a man staying at a secluded historical mansion finds himself being haunted by the presence of a specter. And, I think that's a pretty good outline of the basic story. Because it starts out like a lot of horror films with a character experiencing like a personal tragedy and then having to go somewhere after that and being haunted by it and, dealing with a new situation. So it's
I think the personal tragedy, it starts out, it's pretty good. I think that's a good sequence.
Yeah. I mean, it starts out with something that is, in and of itself, not a horror sequence, just kind of a...
for me, it's a horror sequence in that it's just a terrible horror thing to experience.
Yes.
But it's not a typical somebody spooky thing in the attic. You know what I mean?
It's not a guy in a mask.
It's horror in the truest sense of horror in the real world.
Well, and it's because a lot of those movies are guys, goes crazy and kills people and goes to an asylum and blah, blah, blah. It's not like that. It's just, more of a realistic personal tragedy.
Made me think of another recent film of something terrible happening, Heredity.
Oh, or Hereditary.
Yeah, it made me think of that in some regards, of being like, hey man, this is just a terrible thing that happened that, could potentially happen.
A mind is a terrible thing to waste. You get that. But so the movie starts out with like the, personal tragedy, and then you have like the main character going to live in a mansion that's been vacant for years, and you have
he moves out of his New York home, apartment or whatever that they were at, and then he goes to teach music or composing or whatever at a university, and then they set him up in a home that is owned by the Historical Society, because it's like vacant, so they let him just stay in there.
And two, so the character John Russell is George C. Scott. Somebody where a very level-headed main character, not because a lot of times you have movies and you have kind of an unreliable main character, so you're kind of like, should you trust them, should you not? Like, he's a very level-headed character that works things out, or at least,
and he's not. Yeah, he doesn't. Sometimes you see a horror film and the main characters are scared out of their minds. Yeah. He's like not scared that often. You know what I mean? Like, he's always just like, hey, what the hell's going on? You know what I mean? Like, like you said, he attacks these problems and tries to figure out the solution without jumping to conclusions. He has to be shown something before he just assumes, oh, it's a haunting, or I should be scared for no good reason. He always tries to find out the logical conclusion. And I think George C. Scott too, he's a phenomenal actor. Like, just seeing him just light a cigarette in this film, I don't know, just something about him. I think he is just so entertaining to watch. And which he was in Patton, which I hadn't seen Patton, but Dr. Strangelove. He is so good and so fun. Have you guys seen Dr. Strangelove? Have you seen that, William?
I've seen part. I need to rewatch.
You need to really watch that. There's even some Metal Gear-ness in that film. That was a big influence on Kojima too. But you need to watch that. It's very, very good. But he is phenomenal in that film as well. He's younger.
Yeah. So like you have like a very competent main character, and basically just the movie revolves around guy moves into a mansion, things start happening, and then it's kind of figuring out why. and then trying to address it. So I mean that's the same kind of setup that a lot of movies have had.
Yeah.
Because I would say like something like the Amityville Horror, the original one, is more of just like people live there and creepy things happen, and then they figure out why, then they leave. And that's kind of that movie's arc.
Well, they kind of already knew why. Because,
Well, yeah.
like, they weren't. But this movie, I mean, it's fair to bring up Amityville because it's kind of
Same
similar
era.
in a way. Well, similar in a way, too, where the story, something bad happened in the house, blah, 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 blah. You know, so it kind of relates in that end. But it's something more contemporary. You could almost probably compare to, like, The Babadook, or
I was thinking The Conjuring,
or The
something.
Conjuring,
That's what
or you know
it's
what?
a
Hell, I'm
haunted
gonna
house
throw the Ring in.
I was
on
gonna
this
say The
because
Ring.
the original Ring and even the newest Ring.
You're talking about the American, right?
Yeah, the American version is very similar in a way of where the story progresses because it's been so long since I watched the original.
A
Ring.
difference though is so the Ring is initiated by you taking an action,
Yes.
as opposed to this movie is initiated by just being at the location.
Yeah, this would be more like The Grudge because in The Grudge you have to be in the location to be afflicted by it.
And two, so the movie does have it goes for like some creepy imagery and kind of haunted house scares.
Normally I'm like, on haunted, The Conjuring, not my favorite. I like it. It's fine.
Yeah.
But this film works for me way better than a lot of those do, and way better than the modern ones do. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it is the main character and the way it's handled versus it being teenage kids or, again, just really creeped out people or just trying so hard to just be real creepy. You know what I mean? There's just something about it that it goes at it from a level-headed perspective.
Yeah, which I think it changes
and
it
it
a lot.
makes it
more interesting.
yeah, I put more value on the scary things that do happen. And also, too, did you see that this was like the Amityville Horror, something the writer said that happened to him?
Yeah, because I read up on the history of it, and a lot of the elements are pretty much verbatim from what the writer had said had occurred.
Yeah.
And then the actual mansion got tore down, in more recent times for a high-rise apartment complex.
But apparently this happened to him in a house.
Yeah.
And then he wrote a screenplay, I guess, based on it. And, he had a co-writer with it, but...
Yeah, so that element alone, so when you think that like, oh, this is based on something that somebody actually experienced, now, when you say based on a true story, there's so much, because what's so funny is, so The Changeling was, written by the writer, from experiencing personally experiencing things and making those claims. And you have that. And then the Clint Eastwood Changeling was based on true events too. So you like both movies are kind of based on, and basically like the general conceit of what a changeling is, because isn't it based on like folklore,
Irish folklore,
with like fairies or something, and like in the
someone just taking your place.
Yeah, it's like just someone replacing someone.
Like a fairy would have I guess, evilish entity that would take over somebody.
So the movie has some different, attempts at like haunted house, or not like, the house is haunted and there's scares. And then it tries to tie it into the emotional connection of the main character. So there's more resonance for it. And it's not just, because there's like different things connected to like the family that happened before the tragedy and stuff that comes back up. So, it's one of those movies where it's not set up like you said, The Conjuring. So The Conjuring, I think James Wan is amazing at setting up set pieces and constructing, like from The Conjuring to the guy, I forgot what the name of the little rhyme about the Bendy Man.
Essentially the Slender Man character.
What was it?
Bendy Man.
Whatever Conjuring fans here, we know all the history.
Well, whatever the creepy thing was that was like the little nursery rhyme thing. So like you have like those kinds of really great set pieces like that.
Well, even the nun in that movie.
Well, and then the nun set piece where you have all these awesome things like that. This movie is not that at all. No. It's more of like the slow burn scare or just creepiness of this guy's in the house and things happen. And
it shouldn't happen because things happen.
And it doesn't set it up such that you see an evil creature coming up the stairs and the character has like no way to get it. It doesn't set it up like that and do like the suspense like creature walking towards character thing. It's more of just noises and things happening in the house. And
I think the
imagery.
mystery is doled out well too. That's another thing that kind of fails on some of these more recent paranormal films. something like Lights Out or, you know, any of those, sometimes if the mystery isn't revealed, isn't good enough, or the way that is revealed, it feels
Yeah.
like it's second fiddle to the story as far as like, oh, we're worried about the jump scares. We need to figure out a story too, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just like the Lights Out, all that stuff was changed because they felt like they needed more or whatever. And I'm not saying it came from the director, but the studio or somebody felt like there needed to be more. This, I think, is doled out really well and also horrifying. Like, it's scary in a different way of like, okay, this is some events that happen. Yeah, this is a horrible thing that would you know, that in reality would be terrible.
Well, and two, the fact that, you know, throughout you have like different involvement with like people who are politicians and
Yeah.
different parts of society.
Yeah, not to
Like-
spoil too much, but it kind of reminded me of the Dead Zone a bit.
I was going to say
When-
that.
Yeah, when it goes
I was going to
into
say, so like once you've seen it, you know what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
And you know, I kind of just remind me of whatever Omen it was, where he was the president or some type of politician.
maybe?
Yeah, I can't remember. They had
One
I
of the
think it
Sam
was-
Neill ones.
Yeah,
or
I don't remember.
I don't-
Yeah.
Either way, there's an Omen film where they had where like
No, because
he
Sam Neill was
became-
younger, so
yeah.
he would have been. But like,
Well, eventually he just became a politician.
but
It's
part
fine.
of it is like, you know, like we say, like reminds us of the Dead Zone in a completely different way than that. It's just like small
Wait a
little
minute,
elements.
Christopher Walken Dead Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, or the book or whatever.
Yeah,
but
no,
like,
but there's like it's,
But the point was, you know, there are small elements that, you know, or something that reminds you. I don't remember when the Dead Zone was written. I mean, like I said, the connection to this is only like one thing, really, and it's
And
not,
apparently that was the true thing. Also, not exactly the same. Not wait, no, it wasn't a politician, but it was a lawyer.
yeah,
But yeah, I think we can get into spoilers now. Like, I
Yeah.
enjoyed the film quite a bit.
Yeah.
Just to give my roundabout rating, like, I did have to watch it in chunks. Like, I tried to, because I didn't know anything about this film and I didn't want to look up anything about it before I
Yeah.
watched it. I started it like 4 or 5 days ago, and then
Yeah.
only had like 15 minutes at a time. So that, I don't know if that hurt or helped my experience, because I guess it didn't feel super slow to me, but again, I watched it in chunks. I don't know if it hurt or helped my experience, but by the end of it, I was like, hell yeah, like I'm way into this movie and I kind of want to get to Blu-ray and stuff. Like I may be higher than some people, but I give it like closer to a 9, because normally the paranormal films I'm not super into.
Yeah.
But this is like one of my favorite, I think, of like ghost stories.
well, I think you know, I didn't know that this was based on somebody's real
yeah. I didn't
experiences.
know it until after I read
yeah,
that.
me too.
So I think that makes it a little more interesting, because this isn't a movie that's like, you know, marketed that way. Because I'd never heard of it till we talked. When I heard the Changeling thing, Clint Eastwood joke,
And I give
you
it
know.
cachet being so early. You know,
Yeah.
if this would have happened, if this would have been a movie in 2000s, you'd be like, oh, this is like in the middle of that. Well done, but in the middle. Like,
But still, though, you would say that, but this was still kind of after the Amityville stuff,
Yeah.
which was, you know, this came out in 80. Amityville Horror came out, what, 74, 75? So you're not talking that big of a gap. So it's still in that era where, like, because, you know, this has really happened, you know.
The Amityville Horror was 79, so it was just right before this.
Or maybe the actual events took place in whenever. But,
The alleged events.
yeah, the book, but whatever. So, you know, this isn't really thrown around that much, maybe since it's a Canadian film. I don't know. But I really kind of liked the slow burn aspects because the story was interesting. Like, you know, again, I found myself bored looking through my phone on some of it. I think that's to be expected for a film from the 1980, but you know, kind of coming off of Beetlejuice, it's like this is not as easy as a movie to watch as that. This is something that you do get engrossed in the story. But, you know, if my cat came in the room and wanted to play with the hairband, like I'm shooting that
So-
across the room, and I'm finding other stuff to do.
So it's like one of those things where, so like this movie, like The Changeling, so like Beetlejuice is more of a general interest movie. You
Yeah.
can kind of watch
and
it
we're only
whenever.
bringing that up because you probably watched them back to back, right?
Yes, yeah, I
So-
watched them. in
Not
the
that they're
same,
in way any related.
but, you know,
So-
for the podcast, I watched.
But the thing
them
is, this
pretty-
type of movie, I think you need to be in the mood for, and I think it's
Yeah.
like, you know, recommending whether or not you want to watch it. So if you're into the era of like those horror movies that are a little bit more slow burn and I'm trying to think like, you know, comparable movies in terms of, you know, the way it unspoils and the way it, like the Sentinel, I think like at least like stylistic from the same time-ish era, or, you know, the original, like the difference I would say between this and like the original Amityville Horror is the Amityville Horror is just like people experience this thing and have to escape it, and that's kind of the entire point of the movie.
And for me, some reason the Amityville Horror feels more dated.
and
I don't know. I feel like the Amityville Horror just doesn't hold up as well
because
Yeah.
this movie
This film does.
this movie's better. Like
Well, yes.
Amityville Horror was
Yeah.
kind of schlocky,
Yes,
and
yeah.
to be fair, like when we did it for the podcast, when you think of this movie, it's billed as like even it took a dig at The Exorcist. Like this is scarier than The Exorcist. That was their marketing.
Yeah.
And you go and listen to all these top 100 lists, and it always gets brought up, and then you watch it. And jack shit happens in that movie. Like there's literally like the biggest scare in that movie is like where they have the pig in the reflection or whatever, like in the window where I think it's a cat. I can't remember, but it was a jump scare.
it looks like Ganondorf
Yeah.
from like the Zelda.
So it's like
Nintendo and
where this
NES.
movie doesn't really do that as much, but it's just like the way that it's built up is better. Because I think that was more of a exploitive film with Amityville because it was just like selling on the book and the kind of the social experience that movie was in that time period. Whereas this didn't. Because that movie had was a real big cultural phenomenon. Obviously this wasn't that way because I've never heard about it.
Well, and two, that had the Warrens involved and had the book about it,
Yeah.
and it had all the,
It was all fake.
public, the
It didn't
publicity. And with this story, it's more of just somebody's experience. It's probably uncorroborated. I mean, I think there was some corroboration of some of the information and the facts and things like that, but this wasn't a phenomenon in the same way it wasn't
No.
in the news or a big story.
And that's just an interesting aside because it's a good movie.
And I read about
Yeah.
I read that afterwards, and it's like, oh, well, if I'd known that before, like I don't know if it works better to know that before or after.
Kind of think it works. I wish I'd known it before.
If you know it before,
because
then
I think
you-
that makes it interesting.
then
It's
you have
like-
a little bit of
But
context.
also
of,
don't research it because
Yeah, don't look
it
into it.
reveals some of the plot
Yeah.
because you think like, oh, it's just the haunting stuff. No, actually some of the plot, it goes into that.
yeah,
So
is the
do not
same
look it up.
information. Yeah,
So are we
look
into
it
our
up after.
spoilers portion?
Yeah, so we can finish up right now. So like in terms of giving a watch, like I said, definitely if you're into that era and like good movies to watch that are more classic horror, like Don't Look Now,
Suspiria, Sentinel, these
all
older-
completely different types of movies.
Yeah, but they're slower burn horror movies. This fits right in there, I think.
And-
if
and,
you
like,
the
this one,
classical, like
there's a-
Rosemary's Baby, it kind of
Yeah.
fits
and
right
the thing
in
is,
there.
there's a story throughout. It actually reveals information. It's not just a person experiences scary thing must survive. There's actually
Yeah.
more going on. So yeah, so I think that lays out enough to know if you should check it out or not. So now we can move into our full spoiler discussion. So if you haven't seen it, check out now. You can watch the movie. You can order the DVD or Blu-ray or try to watch it one of those ways.
Yeah, if you do YouTube, you got to watch it all the way through the first
But-
time because you might not find it the
But
second
we
time.
recommend buying it.
Yeah, I recommend buying it.
Yeah.
But this was just a
Buy
harder fit.
movies.
This was just a harder fit.
Yeah, check out. Yeah, I mean, I think I paid maybe $6 for the DVD.
Yeah.
You can start there instead of paying $22 for the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I don't want to recommend everybody jump in because it may not be everybody's bag.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll hit like a streaming service because Amazon Prime's getting a lot of stuff.
Yeah, now that they've done the transfer, the HD transfer, hopefully they'll put it on there because the DVD transfer is fine, but it's not like a great. You can tell they didn't source this from like a high quality scan,
the pristine
Yeah.
like original negatives or whatever. But yeah, so now we'll do full spoilers for the Changeling, and yeah, so the movie so the elements you have he throws the ball into the water and then it comes back down the stairs.
That's the scene that I knew about happening.
Yeah.
That was the scene everybody's like, oh, the ball scene coming down the stairs and stuff, which watching that too, I was like, did they steal this in Trolls 2 at the end? Because Trolls 2,
Yeah.
like
The
I
baseball.
said, as a kid, I came in at the end of Trolls 2. It was on TV or something.
Yeah.
And that creeped me out. That's all I'd seen of the film was like the kid telling the mom bye or whatever. She's going to get in the shower or something or however that happens. And then the ball coming down. That was creepy in that. And I was wondering, did they steal that from the Changeling?
Maybe
It's possible.
Well,
yeah. I know American kids. They fed baseball. Yeah, I love that direct. There's a movie they made about it, and
best worst movie.
Yeah, but
And the
you need to
director
watch it.
basically told American teenagers what American teenagers did.
That's what is so good about it. The accent was terrible because I think he's Italian, whatever.
But like
just watch
something
it.
reading like some old like critical reviews of the movie from the era that it came out during. I think it was Roger Ebert had said that the fact that your main character John Russell is so level-headed and competent, you never really feel like he's in danger because he's not the object of this entity's anger. He's just, it's kind of like Sixth Sense. It's kind of going through him to figure out, to help him figure out, which is another movie we could have said it was like similar into in some regards, is Sixth Sense. It's basically a spirit trying to use a person to figure out the mystery and help it get some closure.
Which is why I like this concept better than something like The Ring or The Grudge, because like
just not out to kill or
because those
something. Yeah.
things, while those spirits were wronged, like they are very
Killing innocent people
They
have
kill
nothing to do
innocent
with
people.
their-
Have nothing to do with it. This one is just like
Looking for justice.
It's looking for justice and
two,
only wants what
the
it's going
changeling
after.
that became like the kid that grew up to become the adult who is like the politician. He himself actually did not do anything really wrong.
He's just put in a situation that he didn't.
I think it was just not wanting to believe it or recognize it and saying like, "Oh, my
Yeah.
father was a good man." But the thing is, most people's reaction would be that their father's a good man, because I've known of like people in the real world where a guy and a girl hook up when they're young and it's like a one night stand. There's a baby that comes out of it, and the guy is just a terrible father, absentee, wants nothing to do with the kid. And the kid never gets to meet him or know much about him. Then that person 10 years later gets married and has a family and is a very great family man to that child and those children. And then those children like would not realize their dad walked out on a kid and, disavowed him and stuff. So you have these elements of like, if you told those kids that their dad was a bad person, they might not believe it or have a hard time coming to terms with it immediately. So I understand the concept of a character taking a while to reconcile that. But it's basically just, years earlier, there was a family where the son needed to live to 21 years old to receive a vast inheritance, and the kid was sickly and wheelchair confined. So the dad one night drowned the kid in the tub and disposed of the body and got rid of him, and brought a kid from an orphan and sent him over to Europe to go to school, and the kid came back cured and no longer had any physical ailments and was perfectly healthy. And then, of course, lived to be 21 and they were able to get the inheritance and have a wealthy lifestyle and all this stuff. So that's your basic plot line. And then it's basically just the spirit of the kid that was killed trying to, bring that to light and have rights be wronged or at least get justice. And then your character that moves into the house, since he's experienced his own personal tragedies, maybe more sensitive to the afterlife.
When first, I think for a moment he probably thinks it's
His family.
his family.
Trying to reach
And
out.
then
Like the
it's-
ball coming down the stairs,
And they have the
stuff.
medium come in,
Yeah.
and then they get this information. So then he starts digging into the mystery and then tries to confront the politician about it. And that's where he said the dead zone things come in, when he's like got the gold necklace with the medallion, he's at the airport, and then when he finally gets an audience with the politician. And this one, the politician wasn't like pure incarnate or evil.
No.
Him being a changeling wasn't because he was an evil clone.
Yeah,
or
he didn't
alter.
really have a choice in it.
It was just he was a changeling, in that the dad changed out kids so no one would notice and he could get money.
But also too, I know the politician did nothing wrong originally, but also you got the gist that, hey, he was somebody who abused his power also.
Yeah.
And he also probably kind of knew because, immediately the woman got fired from her job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or
when he saw the
position or
medallion, he
whatever.
had some idea of what it meant.
But I guess that was right after he went to the airport, right?
Yeah,
She
and
got
then-
fired and stuff.
And then they sent the police officer to come to his house to investigate.
So like he's, maybe not all the way on the up and up, just based on seem like
but
the
as a
possible
child, he
abuse of
didn't
power.
orchestrate
Yes.
that scenario.
Yeah, he was just kind of
Regardless of what happened after the fact, he was
accomplice,
not
probably.
But so it's one of those things where you have a character that experiences personal tragedy, which makes them more susceptible to be sensitive to these types of supernatural things, or like you said, to even think is this my family? And then as it goes on, he finds out no, it's not his family. There was something else going on, and then he finds the body of the kid.
That's what I'm saying. This is kind of comparable to The Ring in a way, because like they kind of go through that. They find the body of the girl in the well, because I think they threw the boy in the well. So you have all this kind of similar stuff.
When he unburied the hand, I was like, oh shit. That was a cool moment.
Yeah, but this is like a story that now in horror movies we've seen so much. Because I can't even think of the countless horror movies.
The format
the
especially.
format. It's just because there's a haunting, then you find out that it's because they killed somebody and then the kid was buried.
Like I said, the thing
it's
is
just very
at
similar.
least it didn't have two teenagers going to the rundown house or trailer park of someone to get information
Yeah.
and being
Yeah.
creeped out. This was not like
So essentially, he moves in the house, starts getting haunted, has a medium come, and then I forgot the woman's. He goes to the address of the house. I forgot how he got that address.
I'm trying to remember.
board.
Anyway, and also too, they're looking at microfilms to figure out the history of the house and everything. He finds the hand with the medallion. He takes the medallion to the senator as he's leaving. They of course pull him away because he seems a little bit like a crazy person. And then he goes to confront the senator. The police officer comes to his house. Police officer dies afterwards.
The police officer comes and wants the gold necklace because he's just working for the senator or whatever. And then when he leaves the location, he gets involved in a fatal car accident.
Single car.
Yeah, fatal accident. And so then I think that the senator, like when he hears that the cop died in this accident, like has to think there's something going on.
Yeah.
And then when the guy confronts him and tells him the story of what happened and shows him the necklace, then like at that point it's laid out in a way that he probably should accept it. But then like when he doesn't, and then the main character John goes back to the house, then like the house catches on fire and
Very
like,
cool sequence.
and he's laying there, and then he can see, I guess, the astral projection or the mental projection of the senator like going up and him seeing what happened, that was true,
Knowing that his dad was a murderer.
and knowing that did happen. And then you know John gets out of the house and he survives, and then the only thing left out of like the rubbish or the rubble of the house, like the wheelchair that was the little kid. So that's like a creepy image. And the wheelchair shows up throughout the movie too.
And so the real life story too was he went there, he uncovered, and he found supposedly found a necklace, but it was of a lawyer instead of a senator. You know, that was the difference between what supposedly really happened.
Slightly lower stakes.
Yeah.
And that's just a
But you know, it's just
lawyer.
interesting, all these films kind of going after politicians. You know, that the Dead Zone just being like evil incarnate in the Dead Zone and stuff like that. And this one not being totally on the up and up. But yeah, it's like, I would like to trace the lineage of this format of haunting films. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With history. Like, what were the first films that started building this foundation of the structure of that?
Well, because
it definitely feels like a somewhat early one. You know, I know there was probably, you know, plenty ones that were that built on this way before. I feel like the film that Drag Me to Hell was sort of a remake of, that I can't think of the name now, which I did watch that. That also felt like that had some revealing history.
Well,
not exactly a haunting, but
Well, and two, you've had other modern movies, like even Crimson Peak to some extent. A character goes somewhere, finds out the history of the place, and then that, you know, creates some conflict that things happen. So you have a lot of movies.
Like House on Haunted Hill, and I mean a lot of that stuff kind of.
But yeah,
it's
like
different,
I would be
but-
interested, like you said. I mean, you go back to literature too. Like how many stories were that was the case where
that structured format that is used so much now in modern paranormal, that is in vogue right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
the thing happened years ago that, you know, caused this supernatural event to occur that some person has to discover the meaning of.
It's like the Babadook is kind of similar in that.
Well, the Babadook to me was more of like a metaphor for like.
but it still kind of had the
And-
personal
that was-
tragedy.
Yeah, but that was I feel like that was very super personal. This is like, hey, this is this person brought in on this thing that has to figure this out for this spirit to right some wrong.
This is nothing like Mothman, but Mothman should be remade with not gerbil butt.
Richard Gere, alleged Derek. Wasn't that on South Park too?
And Family Guy. Because they have Richard Gere and Family Guy, and he's like, "Didn't you put a gerbil in your butt?" And he's like, "No." And then Peter walks off, and the gerbil crawls out of his pants leg.
Yeah, and then there was on South Park, wasn't there like a gerbil that like the spirit of it or something helps them. But it's one of those things where just like that format is so tried and true in today's world. There's so many movies that have used that, and so many TV series.
can't even really think
and
about
so many
that.
things that
You have to
if you
list
just
it.
came in this movie after having watching all the contemporary things for like a 17-year-old, it probably moves a bit slow. But you know, watching it from the perspective of being just a film fan, there's a lot there to find and enjoy. And two, it's interesting reading like the reviews at the time. Because people are saying like, oh, you know, if a haunted house movie, you know, having scares and creaks and things is all it takes to be effective, this should be a knockout, but it was missing something. But then you rewatch these movies now and look at critical conception or reception now, and a lot of that's shifted because people back then, to them, scary movies. I mean, even then, when Psycho came out, people thought it was crass exploitation when it came out, and then now it's very classical filmmaking. But at the time, it was so out of line with what they were used to. Because you had like the Hammer horror films, and you had like the Vincent Price stuff, and
Well, let's just even look at The Exorcist. Like at one point in time, that was like almost X-rated. You know, people were, and then now that is very, very
reserved
mild.
compared to what. Because you know, so you know, we've mentioned Rob Zombie a lot. Imagine Rob Zombie's remake of The Exorcist.
Oh my God, it'd be
like she's in the bed.
I want
Like
to see that.
I want to see, but when she's the demon and she's like ranting, it's in Rob Zombie lyrical form. It's like I'm in the bed. And it's, dabba-da, dabba-dabba-da.
So just like Living Dead Girl is essentially what she's
So
singing,
then, like,
you know?
she grabs like the cross, starts like using it for masturbation. It's like a lot of quick cuts and lighting, and it's playing Brick House.
Like, wait a minute, like she's a Brick House for by the 1980s pop song or Rob Zombie.
His version he used in
Oh
House of
no,
Thousand
I'd
Corpses.
rather use the other version because that
Or
would
was it the
actually
original version in the? No, so in
She's a
the
brick.
in House of a Thousand Corpses, did they
Rick
play the
James.
original version when that like in this, and then they played his cover at the end? I don't remember, but
Either way, she's doing it to Rick James' Brick House.
point is,
In the
when you look at the
Commodores,
history of
whatever.
film, what was considered crass exploitation or
Yeah.
over the top jump scares in 1980 is vastly different than today.
yeah, vastly.
And Halloween, when it came out, people were like, "Oh, this is just too out there for me. This is too over the top. It's well done, but I can't. This is just too much." And then you watch it today, and it's like this is incredibly reserved of the slasher era. Like what the era became later is not what that movie.
Even like Friday the 13th, when every single murder is just whited out, you know.
So it's just one of those things we watch. If you look at the critical consensus on a movie and when it came out and now, sometimes it changes, sometimes it doesn't. But like in a lot of horror movies, it does seem like it shifts more than other genres. Like I don't think too many people hated The Godfather when it came out and kind of came around on
Yeah.
it. I think on horror, people trashed The Thing when it came out, but then now they love it and talk about how great it is. So I think when you like the Changeling to me is one of those movies that fits more in the era of like Don't Look Now and The Sentinel and stuff from that era.
If you like
that-
Rosemary's Baby, stuff like that,
yeah,
this will work.
more reserved horror that's from an era before it became, more over the top, and the mystery in it actually, like the story unfolds in a way that there is something there, and it's not just escape the building before the ghost kills you.
Yeah.
It's more of the guy could just leave and go somewhere else if he wanted to, but becomes involved in the mystery and wants to solve it. And, it's one of those things where you have a competent main character, which
doesn't
is
happen.
rare in a lot of those movies.
Yeah.
And he's not going through psychosis and mania and becoming more and more deranged and then almost kills
Yeah.
people.
And at the end of the movie, he turns into the child, and he is the child. Yeah.
Somebody else too, Melvin Douglas, who is the senator.
Yeah.
I think he's an awesome actor
Or
too.
senator, not governor.
Senator, but he's also in, of course, a million things. But Being There with Peter Sellers. I don't know if you guys ever seen that, but very, very good film. But he plays like another rich person in that movie as well. But
You know, it would have been cool if Don Pleasance was in this as the main character. It would be.
that's too close to Being There and Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely recommend watching Doctor Strangelove as well. Yeah, I like this film a whole lot. I'm glad it wasn't a total dud, because sometimes
Yeah.
these films are that you hear like, oh, this was a classic.
Yeah.
And then you watch it and you're like, I could see that. But for me, I at least still got something out of it. And
Well, and two, it's just a lot of times sensibilities shift a lot. And I think this one just has such a story that at its core is similar to things being done now that you can probably go in and get some enjoyment out of it. But yeah, like, giving it a score out of 10, it's kind of hard because, like I said, a lot of these scores, they're all subjective, not really comparative. But, to me, it's like at least a 7 out of 10, like 7 or 8. Like, it's an enjoyable enough movie from that era. This would not be the first one I grabbed and show people going forward, but it's just like if you are a horror film fan and you have not seen it, it's worth your time checking it out. Or if you haven't rewatched it in a long time, maybe give it another watch, because it's something I don't remember ever seeing on like AMC Fear Fest, or there's a lot of those movies like Don't Look Now and this. Like I don't remember seeing those on any of those Fear
They're
Fest.
never going to show them.
Because they usually show the Halloweens, the Friday the 13th, Hellraiser, Nightmare on Elm
American
Street,
films.
American Werewolf in London, more of the box office success movies versus the ones that maybe were more influential, or, I mean, granted, those movies are influential, but like,
This would be something you see on like term movie classic.
well, like if you're just
Or
thinking
something like that,
if you
it would
think of
be-
music, this is the equivalent to an album track.
Yeah.
This is something that may have been hugely influential, but didn't get all the press of like the big flashy radio single.
This
with the
ain't,
video.
yeah, this is not a single.
Yeah.
I'm right with you with the 7 out of 10. Like, again, it feels like a movie paced from the 80s, but the story is, the mystery and the story are intriguing enough to keep you like interested in
And
it.
it's not over 2 hours. It's under 2 hours.
It's under 2 hours. So, I mean, it is a good movie, but, like I said, it would not be the first one I put on because like if you were like the Sentinel isn't always the best movie, but there is at least enough stuff in that that's like memorable where you have like the thing, you know, it's essentially your dad, but you see him walk across the room, and there's just a couple of other really good scenes that are memorable in that. Whereas this one doesn't really have anything like that for me, with the exception of the ball scene. So you know, there's not that go-to like really anything with this, but the story is good.
Yeah.
And I think that's mainly what this is about. So what it goes for, it does very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I said before, I still probably say give it about a 9 for just because I just like George C. Scott, and just watching him on screen. Like if it was somebody else that was much less of an actor, then yeah, this film would have been lower for me for sure.
Yeah,
but I'm cool just watching that dude act, and you know he's does a great job carrying it.
If the lead character wasn't engaging, the movie would fall very flat.
Yeah.
So that does help it a lot. Yeah. So definitely, you know, it's something that if you haven't watched in a while, give it another watch. Hopefully, it'll be more available on streaming services where it's easier for people to get a hold of it.
The Blu-ray too. You can get one with a soundtrack and I think a ball replica and a little pin. And I don't think it's like that much more. Maybe like $10 or $15 more or something. But I do want to check out the other transfer, and I'd love to see some special features on this just to know more about the film and the production.
Yeah, maybe hear interviews with the writer.
A good double bill for this would be this and Troll 2.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, great ball scenes downstairs in cinema.
American Teenager. Yeah, so that'll wrap up our discussion of The Changeling. If you're listening via iTunes, you can do us a huge favor, leave a review there. It helps other people find the podcast. You can find all the work we're doing at housebyvasestore.com. Find links there to our social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all the stuff there. You can actually, too, also watch our short films, or most of them, on Amazon Prime. So, too, just in case you're not aware, Amazon Prime does not mean that we get paid for that or that it went through some serious vetting process.
It's just
you set up an account, you submit your film, you have to give it in a certain format with like certain images, and as long as you don't have graphic, full frontal nudity and hate speech, you get approved and go on there. So it's not like anything special happens. Just you can do that, but you can watch on my Amazon Prime. So we have, I think we have Rush to Death has been on there recently, which we finally added on after not having it on there for a while. So we have that one on there. You can watch most of the shorts there. So leave us a review there if you enjoy them. That'd be awesome.
They didn't pay us for it, but we get paid for streams or for time watched.
Yeah, so I think so far it's made over the course of adding everything at the end of 2017 about $20-something. So rolling in the money there. That doesn't even cover the cost of like buying one of the royalty-free songs we used in something. But yeah, so you can check all those out there. You can also check them out on YouTube or Facebook. But yes, if you want to find anything, it's all at housebyvasestore.com. And if you want to find us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Instagram at @TheWilliamCaps.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at MetaWorldEric.
And I'm at Blevin Sean on Twitter.
And that'll wrap up this episode of the House by Vasestor podcast. Thanks for listening.